Hello there. So here is my Pedestal of Time. So the pedestal itself is just a couple of pine boards that I had cut up, glued together, and then secured with some drywall screws or wood screws, and then left this little piece of the back so that I could make a plate for the power input and a switch for the power. The front of it, I just drew on a couple of triangles using geometry and rulers and stuff, which is surprisingly a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. But then I colored them in so that I could see where they are, and then I used the jigsaw to cut them out, and some body filler to fill in all the gaps, and then the screw head holes and stuff so it'd look continuous and whatnot. The accessories on the top of it, the ocarina was just, again, some more wood that I fed to my belt sander, and then used some more body filler to fill it in. The Kokiri Emerald, all the spiritual stone colors was just sheet acrylic with some color filter on top of it. You can see the little book of Roscolux filters right there, and some Loctite GO2, which dries crystal clear and worked really, really well for this project. So just cut out the shapes and whatnot and fit them to the bezels. I actually like the way this one looks. It's just that they all ended up being gold, so I kind of lost that wood grain, and the gold color was gold leaf rub and buff. This is the Goron Ruby. Anyway, so that's that. The Zora Sapphire, it started out kind of ugly looking, but then I, again, just sanded it for a while, cut some more holes so that it looked a little bit more like this. The foot switch, the bottom was more wood that ended up getting glued to the top of the pedestal so that it would be secure, and it all got painted together and whatnot. The crystal was just some more sheet acrylic that I had glued together. I ended up not going with the GO2 because they don't really glue the flat acrylic very well, so I ended up just using CA glue for this one. Ocarina, all sanded and painted and looking pretty and stuff. The foot switch, again, just more wood and some aluminum rivets that I had found somewhere. I think they're left over from like my freeze gun project. It got black painted, then some more silver rub and buff just to make it look a little bit better. This is the spiritual stones and the box. I actually have a different box. That box, it started out like this, just a box that I picked up from Michael's that had some stuff around the edges, but I peeled that off and replaced it with gold, or not gold, but copper foil tape, and then melted some solder around it so that when I went back to it, it looked like this. So that is all dirty and stuff, and looked a little bit more like, iron or some sort of metal brackets and whatnot. This was totally going to be part of the original thing, but then my friend Jessica, who, yes, this is totally her. She looks exactly like this, by the way. She went to Japan and got me some Cocos, and I was just like, oh, okay, I got to give you something. So I cut out some sheet aluminum and fashioned it into a rupee, silver one to be exact, and then mounted it in the box with a little, hey, you got a silver rupee. So anyway, spiritual stones, they got a foil back to them so that they weren't transparent anymore, or they're not. They had the kind of a shiny back to them. Comparatively, they're just kind of ridiculously huge, so I kind of like leaving them separate. Yeah, just because. So painting the pedestal, got some nice thick coat of primer, but then I use this granite or concrete paint on it. It works really well. It's just like some spray adhesive with black and white and gray particles and stuff that it takes forever to cure, but when it dries, it actually looks like concrete or granite and stuff. So that when I was done with this, then I started the weathering process of just hitting it with some acrylics, blacks and browns, and there's even some whites in there. So when you look at the pictures of like weathered and dirty concrete, there's some very specific highlights and whatnot. Maybe it's bird poop on a statue or something like that. But either way, the white, and there's even some green highlights in there that made it look really good. The shadow actually just adds to the effect, and the highlights just make it pop a little bit more. So um, there's actually some greens in there too for the little, like, around the bottom area. So this is before I went to the actual moss matte. But yeah, looks good. The Triforce was against more sheet acrylic with sun gold paint on one side. The side facing out is just a bare acrylic, so that I was able to go over it with some black and brown, so that actually looked black when it's off, but then when you turn it on, it's gold, and I thought that worked out really well. Alright, so with the electronics, I don't actually have any pictures of the wiring, so I'll just let the pictures keep going. It uses the Petit Crouton version 1, the one with the analog sensors, and I just took the analog sensors off and put buttons on them so that you can be manually triggered, kind of like the Dynamite Jim's Insult box. But it uses a 9-volt DC power, so that's that plug-in thing that you're seeing right there with the big wire coming off of it. There's two switches. There's a switch for when you put the sword in. It's on a little snap action switch, but there's also a manual slider switch on the back of it so that you can manually turn it off when the sword isn't in. The music, the blasters, or not the blasters, but the ocarina, it'll trigger 8 sounds, and 4 of them are fairy quotes that have music behind them, and the other 4 are ocarina tunes that have the full version of the music behind it, except for like Temple of Time. And I just thought Majora's Mask fit that one so much better, just because of, if you ever played Majora's Mask, you play the tune and you go back in time, blah blah blah. Anyway, so yeah, it was fun to make. It was really fun to go through the Zelda music and stuff. I spent an entire day going through Zelda music, but yeah, hope you like it. That's my Pedestal of Time.